Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Salazar, and the rest of your team for joining us today. I have an opening statement that I've prepared that will be submitted for the record separately. I'd like to start with the preamble that our domestic energy resources are an important component of being able to grow a strong domestic economy, to be able to provide good private sector jobs, and to promote our national defense. Department of Interior's activities to affect drilling permit moratoria, drilling permit slowdowns, are hurting all of those. I'd also submit that our best strategic energy reserves are not those in the strategic petroleum reserves. They're those on the public lands that our taxpayers own, the public lands and offshore areas. We're one of the few countries in the world, if not the only country in the world, that puts our domestic resources off limits so that we're forced to import from other countries. Since 2008, the energy royalties and lease income from the federal government, and before you try to rebut my facts, this comes from the Office of Natural Resources Revenues, says that our revenues from offshore in 2008 have gone from $16 billion to $8 billion. That certainly is not a good way to handle a taxpayer resource. And the alternative, we should be capitalizing on the trillions of dollars of taxpayer-owned national resources that we have to grow our economy, fuel domestic job growth, and assure our national security. Not only did the Department of Energy enact a drilling moratorium in deep water, it is also engaged in a dramatic slowdown in issuing shallow water permitting, which is operated in an environmentally safe manner for over 30 years. And before we try to rebut those facts, the average number of new well permits in the years 2006 through 2008 was 330 a year. Last year, it was 104. This year, it's been 13. And that comes from the BOMRE database. What's next? The actions of the Department of Interior are an integral component of the current increase in gasoline prices, which began before the Middle East uncertainty. And each $1 increase in gasoline prices is a $120 billion tax on the consumers of this country. And I would submit to you that that dwarfs the 10,000 megawatts of power that the Department of Energy is trying to produce, or the impact of the entire budget of the Department of Energy, of the Department of Interior. Historically, the U.S. has always been a country that companies wanted to do business in because we followed the rule of law, and we also had a transparent permitting process that was not arbitrarily followed. I've been involved with offshore drilling all around the world, and I've seen both models, where we follow the rule of law and where we have arbitrary and capricious regulatory models. And what I've seen, particularly in shallow water drilling in the last few months, has been the latter. And that's not the way to grow, to make ourselves more energy secure. So my question is this: how do the Department of Interior's actions serve to grow the American economy, to help promote private sector job growth, to assure our national security, not only for current generations, but for future generations?
Congressman Flores, I appreciate the question. First, in terms of what we do relative to be part of the economy of this country, we do it both with respect to oil and gas, as well as with respect to other energy resources, as well as with respect to many of the outdoor recreational programs that we have spoken about this morning.
And those can coexist, I believe, can't they?
And they can, and we believe that that's part of what we are attempting to do within the Department of Interior. A couple of points with respect to the revenue issue that you raised. 2008 was a year in which oil and gas prices were high, so that was an abnormal amount of revenue that we received that year. On average, we get $9, $10, $11 billion a year, and we're on track to do that for this year from oil and gas production. In terms of permits, I think you would understand, being from the energy world, that after the Deepwater Horizon and the expectation that you would never see a Macondo well-style blowout, that we had to take action to make sure that we were protecting people, like those 11 people that were killed on the rig.
Yes, well if you look at shallow water drilling,
yes,
we haven't had issues in shallow water drilling for 30 years, and we've had a dramatic slowdown in the issuance of shallow water drilling permits.
Congressman, we have moved forward with shallow water permitting. There were additional requirements on safety that we impose on the shallow water drillers. There are 37 permits that have already been issued, and we expect to have a robust oil and gas production coming out of the Gulf. I think And I would ask you, Congressman Flores, to think about this, that our policy program and objective here is the same. The President of the United States and I support a strong oil and gas production in the Gulf of Mexico. I would expect that you, as well as other members of the industry, would want us to do it in a safe way that protects people and protects the environment. That is why the budget that is in front of you is part of that effort to make sure that we're able to do that. I would hope that we in America can create the gold standard for safe oil and gas production in the oceans of this world.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from